CrossFit's completed the third-party review of the tragedy at the 2024 CrossFit Games. Let's get into it. Hey, before we get started, I want to point out a couple of things that I think should be obvious, but tends to get lost in the noise of all this CrossFit Games ridiculousness that's going on right now. I love CrossFit. I think you guys love CrossFit too. I found CrossFit years ago in the middle of a divorce when I was lost emotionally and physically. The methodology, the local community, it saved my life. And I wanted to note that because I think we often lose sight of the fact that the craziness that's happening at the games is not the methodology, it's not the local community, it's not the coaches, it's not the magic that happens in the boxes day in and day out. The magic that happens in those boxes is not impacted by what's happening at the games. And I think we need to keep that in the front of our mind that this life-changing methodology is truly saving lives day in and day out. So with that out of the way, hit the subscribe button and let's jump into it. So CrossFit announced yesterday that they've wrapped up the third-party investigation to investigate the facts surrounding the death of Lazar Jukic at the 2024 CrossFit Games. And what I thought I'd do today is give you guys a real high-level view of what they said and what I think the subtext or the context of it means. Now, the first point that they brought up or they mentioned, and I predicted this a little over 3 months ago on my podcast, Kettlebells and Cocktails with Nikki, is that they're not going to be releasing the details of the investigation. I know that Don promised transparency, and a lot of us were hoping that they would be able to release the details, but the reality is we all knew they wouldn't be able to. It's understandable. This investigation likely reveals private and sensitive information that would not only impact the Jukic family, but also those interviewed. Now, the talking points around the investigation that they release are about what you would expect. It's a word salad of public relations nothingness that attempts to give the appearance of due diligence, but in my opinion, it opens up a lot of questions as to why the work the investigators did hadn't already been done by CrossFit prior to the games itself. Once you get past this word salad, though, the really telling statement is in the next steps portion. They indicate that going forward, they're going to uphold an even higher safety standards at the CrossFit Games. And I got to be honest, I don't know what that means. I mean, we don't know what the previous safety protocol was. So until they release that, they have the lowest bar possible of a higher safety standard, which is basically don't let anyone die or pass away at the games. This entire document doesn't reference these previous safety protocols. And so the promise of a higher safety standard can't be proven until they release those previous safety standards and we can do a comparison side by side to see if it is truly going to be higher. So they're essentially asking us to take them at their word. Well, if we're going to do that, I think you have to look at the points that they make after that to see if we can. And it's those points, I think, that raise a lot of concern for me. The first action that they're planning to put in place is a creation of a new senior leadership role responsible for safety at the CrossFit Games. Here's what that job description says. This person will be responsible for centralizing safety protocols, creating safety and emergency action plans for the games, overseeing pre-event rehearsals, and coordinating with on-site safety experts, staff, and athletes. They'll also include assessing that each event has the required staffing, expertise, and resources on site. This person will be responsible for supporting a culture where athletes, staff, and members of the community feel comfortable elevating safety concerns and have clear paths to do so. This leader will report jointly to Dave Castro, who will continue to lead CrossFit Sport Organization and to CrossFit's CEO, Don Fall. They'll be expected to provide regular briefings on CrossFit safety plans and posture. We will hire for this role externally and begin the search immediately. So interestingly, the part about the role reporting jointly to Dave Castro, who's going to be staying in place to lead sport, and Don Fall really kind of blows my mind. There's a couple of things I don't understand there. First of all, why is the role reporting to both? As if they're on equal footing. The CEO and sport director are not even close to the same role in an organizational hierarchy. So it doesn't make sense that this singular role would report to both of them. Second, this person's job is to create a culture, their word, not mine, where athletes, staff, and members of the community feel comfortable elevating safety concerns and have clear paths to do so. Yet they're going to be reporting to Dave, who very publicly and famously doesn't seem to accept critical feedback very well. If this role isn't fully independent and autonomous of the sports team, then all you can really view it as is another layer of insulation to protect Dave and Don in the event of another tragedy. In a corporation, they typically call that a CYA position or a cover your ass position. The next action they're taking is that they're layering in what I consider another level of bureaucracy by establishing a safety advisory board. Now, at face value, I think a safety board is a fantastic idea. And the fact that they mention that it's independent is also a great idea. But the word that jumps out at me is advisory. Advisory is another word for no real power to implement change. So the decision you have to make here, since both leaders, Dave and Don, who made the critical decisions leading up to the 2024 CrossFit Games and are still going to be in place, can they be trusted to actually take this advice from the advisory board and do something productive with it? Considering the past, you'd have to raise an eyebrow to it. The next thing they mentioned they're planning to do is enhancing pre-event rehearsals, protocol, and emergency resources. Basically spending more time practicing for events prior to them happening and bringing in better and more emergency resources. So again, what you're getting here is a lot of promises on how they plan to allow space for athletes to ask questions, raise concern, and escalate issues, but no real answer as to what Dave and Don plan to do differently moving forward to actually act on them. Now, that's not to say that they won't, but the message currently has to be viewed as what we were doing before, we're going to continue to do, just a lot more of it. So if I can give you an analogy that should resonate with you as CrossFitters, is this. Doing more workouts doesn't make you fitter. Being smarter in how you train makes you fitter. Two-a-days isn't always the best answer. Being smarter in your individual workout will often make you fitter faster. You don't need to do more. You need to be better. And it's the same here. I'm not sure they need more rehearsals, more protocols, more emergency resources. They need better rehearsals, better protocols, and better emergency resources. And then last, it says they're establishing an athlete council, again, their words, to allow athletes a place to share feedback and have greater influence. Now, this part actually made me laugh a little bit. It feels a lot like a middle finger to the PFAA. And if I'm being honest, I don't blame them. The PFAA came in hard in the paint, made demands that they really didn't have the power to demand. And I'm sure that ruffled a lot of feathers at CrossFit. So I don't blame them for doing that. But what this is doing is it's creating yet another level of communication that's required that historically has been ignored. More of this, we just plan to do more and do it better. Also, they had an athlete council once back in 2020. It was rolled out by Eric Rosa. So I'm not exactly sure I'm excited to see that this fresh new idea that they have is the same old idea that was rolled out by the guy who nearly tanked the company to begin with. I think the bottom line is when you put all of this together, their answer for transparency, collaboration, and open communication is to simply create more bureaucracy that they expect to get feedback to the same people who ignored those concerns in the past. If CrossFit truly wants safety and feedback, then this new senior leadership position, the safety board, and the advisory council all need to be independent of the games team and have independent decision-making and final say or veto on all things safety. Otherwise, this entire conversation is just a hollow gesture designed to give coverage to leadership. Time will tell. I hope for the sake of the athletes and the community that I'm proven wrong. We'll find out more details as they're released, I think, later this week.